Hello, Chip GT here, and we are continuing our Let's Build series in episode 4, and we are going to be focusing on the launch lane and then the two left and right drain lanes. So without any further delay, let's coin in and push that start button. As per the usual, you're going to need a couple of things to be doing what I'm doing. You're going to need the free link that's in the description for Fusion 360, and you're going to need to be on VPX version 10.8 beta 5. That's what I'm using. Once you have those prerequisites, you'll be able to follow along with me. And I just want to do a quick overview real quick. And rather than doing a very long, like several hours long video, I figured I'd just show you kind of what I did and walk you through the process and my thought process, and then you can make your decision of what you want to do. If you want to use the parts that I'm using, I have a link to my Mega Drive for this episode, and it'll have all the parts in there. It'll have an updated version of my Fusion 360 file, and it'll have this VPX table in its final configuration. So with that, I first started off by thinking, okay, now it's time to do the plastics, and I realized, you know what, I can't really do the plastics yet, because we're missing some key pieces to the drain lanes and the launch lane. Mainly, we don't have any of the metal framing in here. We don't have, like, I ended up removing this because I knew it wasn't right. And I started aligning things to try to get them aligned a little bit better. So I used the ruler tool, brought it over, rotated it 90 degrees. And by squishing things together and pulling and doing different things, I was actually able to get these 4mm tubes here to actually scale back up to the size 2, which is the scale size for everything else that's on the table. And it gave me more of a gap in here for the drains, so that if when I have slide rails that come down for a feature, there's room for the ball to drop and wiggle around a little bit and all that. And then I also went in here, and these slingshots were really sloppy. So I just tightened up the rubber bands around the posts after aligning it, and I wanted to make sure that both posts were aligned properly. So I started there. It's got a little bit of an angle here, a little bit of an angle here, and I just tightened them up and then tightened in the plastics around here to make it so that it was completely covered all the way around. And then, following Jersey Jack's lead, I ended up putting an extra point in here. You just right click and hit add a point, and move this out just a little bit so that we have this nice arch. I kind of like that. And that gave me a good basic starting point for what we needed to do. And the next thing I did was I went online and downloaded our guide basis for the rails and the drains. And keep in mind, I'm only copying the launch in the drain lanes. That way I can have 6 lanes, and I have this really nice launch system. And when scrolling down through the manual, Jack does a really good job of giving you all kinds of information and several different views of what the components look like, so that if you wanted to redesign it yourself, you could. So I took a look at the apron, and I mean, looking at what I have in VPX, this apron is kind of an even apron for a standard body. Wide bodies, the left side goes a little bit higher, and it's just different. So I knew I needed to redo the apron with the launches, and the way that Jack does it, and we'll go back over to the manual, is the apron actually has a piece that comes down, and this is part of the drain lane system. So I figured I'm gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to copy that. And then you can see here there's like a hole cut out for a kicker here. There's a hole cut out here for a bounce back feature. So we're gonna kind of copy this a little bit. Not exactly, but it'll be very similar. And I also wanted to take a look at the actual components for the drains, and I watched a lot of videos about The Hobbit, and I got several different views and several different angles, and what I discovered is that these part numbers for these components are readily available online. So just as an example, I'm going to click number 7 is this shooter lane on the right side rail here, and if you just type in 123400 into Google and just do a search, Pinball Life has the parts. And when I looked at this, I just kind of blew up the part, I realized there's a gap here. And at first I was like, well, what the heck is the point of this? And I also was studying this. When you look at the 2D image, you see these tangs up here, and then you realize, oh, the other tang, the fifth tang is not on top, it's actually mounted to the wood. So I got a good visual reference for this. And there's some secret genius to having this gap right here. If you look on the table or any of the other videos, they put a GI light here, and the GI light shines through here and through this gap and lights up the inner launch lane of the playfield. And I was like, man, that is some secret genius that I didn't know was out there. So it's some really cool engineering. And I was blown away by that. And I was like, I wonder if any of the other rails have something like that, like this number 6, 3301, just to look at it. And sure enough, it has that same kind of genius idea where there's a gap and a light bulb behind here and it shines through. So I was like, okay, I need to copy that. So I really studied this, and I saw the rounded edges and where it was rounded here and there. And time to reverse engineer it, if you will. Here we are up in Fusion 360, and I've already kind of redesigned everything, but I want to take you back and walk you through my thought process of how I did this and came up to the conclusion that I wanted to match this, and how I matched it, and how I did the simple design for this. It looks really complex, but it's really not. All you really need to know is how to use the push-pull tools that are up here under Modify, the creation tools, and the drawing tools. It looks more complex than what it actually is, and I'm going to walk you through that now. Okay, so here's where I left off last. We had created these, and the first thing that I did was I created this sketch and of the rail, just the sideline. And all I did was I started a line point here and then drug it over and stopped it here. And then I used the fit point spline and created another arch right like this, and then carried it there, clicked on the points, you know, adjusted it like we did in the last episode, same thing here. And you may be wondering how I got this perfect offset right here, and that is with the offset tool right here. So using this offset tool, you just click on this and then you click on the line, and you can specify how much of an offset you want. So here's the offset right here, and I said 2 millimeters. I did a lot of research online, and all of these rails are 2 millimeters thick. So I did 2 millimeters, and then created another line to connect that point to that point, and then this point to this point, so we had a closed off feature. And then the next thing I did was I hit close, and I extruded it out using the extrude button and got the basic shape for the rail. And I started off with just the basic shape and decided, you know what, let's go ahead and create a ball, just so we can kind of get an idea of the ball height in relation to this rail. And all the research that I did online, you don't want the height of this to be the same height as the ball. You want it to be like 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch. And that way you have room for like this gate here, and it doesn't look like it's going through your wall. It sits on top of it. So that's what I did, is I took it up to the full ball height, and then was like, you know what, made a mistake, let's drop it down. So that's what I did. And then next, I drew the next side and did the same thing with the spline point curve and offset and all that jazz, and then extruded it up. And then I realized that this one sits up off the ground a little bit. So what I did is I used the push and pull modify feature. So press and pull. So I just clicked on this, went down to a low angle like this, and I mean, you can turn off that. You just click on this feature. I might have to zoom in. There we go. And then you just do the press and push pull, and I pushed it up. And I pushed it up 1/4 of an inch, so that way we could get the air gap that I think that's what that is. Forward, I drew the points for the top here. So if I just kind of highlight this sketch a little bit, you can see I made a box here, because this is, I'm going to have to take this up. In the picture, these actually come up a little bit, and I'm guessing that it's the same height as the ball at the full top point of this. And this is just my best guess, and I can adjust this if I need to later on. But I did a box there, a box here, extruded them up, and then I drew another box. So if I highlight that, you can see the box with the hole, and then I extruded that up as well, like that. That's how I got those flanges. And then I applied some fillets to the sides all the way around. And then I drew another box on the bottom and extruded that down to the play field. And then did the same thing again, drew the box out, added some fillets. There's the box, lots of fillets, making it look pretty, okay? And I was like, you know what, I like that. You know, you can see they had a GI light here, it'll shine through, it'll be great, you know? So then I came over here and I was like, well, if I'm going to do that there, I need to do it over here. So I did just the same thing again. Up, out, and there's that. Applied a whole bunch of fillets to soften it up a little bit. And then I drew this box, because now I have to think about how am I going to get the hole in here like it is in the picture. And we know that the hole goes all the way over here. So I drew a box and extruded a cut into it to get this first cut. Now I know that that doesn't go all the way over, and I want it to kind of be a flush cut to make it actually look like it's supposed to be there. So I ended up drawing another box here and here. So here we have the box to cut up that way, a box to cut up this way, and then we'll eventually extrude this up to be the flange. So that's what I did. And then applied the fillets there. Next, I drew the outline of all the different components here. So this is a solid piece that goes up pretty high. And notice, like, we don't have any rooms for screws. So what they did is they fused screws to the bottom of this, and it goes all the way through. And then to help stabilize it and keep it upright, they added these little tabs. So my first concern when doing some research and looking at this was that if I build these, I have to do it in a way so that it doesn't interfere with the ball. And I'm sure, you know, Jack was thinking the same thing when he designed this, because there is some engineering genius behind this. So I figured, you know what, it probably comes up only a millimeter. And if you look at the ball, you can see if I were to drop this down, there's no interference at 1 millimeter. So I was like, all right, that's not going to interfere with the ball. I'll do that. And then just for some visual, you know, gee whiz, to make it look kind of nice, I bumped this up to 2 millimeters. So that's 1 millimeter. This is 2 millimeters. And then built the rail like that. And I know that there's another piece like this over here, but we're not going to be able to see that because we're going to have some things built in the way. And then I curved and rounded it out to make it look like it had been welded, and then rounded the curves on all these pieces to make it look just a little softer. The next thing I did was I realized I needed to import an image that actually showed where the apron is. So I'm going to just advance forward here. So there's our new image, and it has the apron. And I ended up drawing out the outline of the apron. I ended up like making some circles here and dragging a line from the center point over so that I could mimic it on the other side. And I'll show you. Here is that drawing. It's not like perfect. And keep in mind, my drawings are not perfect. I'm just making them look visually pleasing. And then I extruded that out. Now this is laying flat. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Meant to rotate. Come down. So that is laying flat on the surface, and that's not how aprons are in real life. So I moved it up to the top of the ball height, and then gave it an angle of 2 degrees. And then I realized, oh, I moved the ball over. I'm like, that's not high enough. So I moved the ball back to where it launches out from the kicker into the plunger and raised it up just a little bit more so we have that clearance and that there's not going to be any kind of interference there. Then I ended up drawing a new set of things on here, and these are going to be the flanges that I extrude down. So again, I just drew boxes like this, box there, box here, and using the push-pull tool I just extruded them out again. So now you can see we have this box, and I made sure to extrude it down through the playfield because I went the easy route instead of actually building this like somebody would in real life with like sheet metal and doing bends and things like that. I'm kind of cheating because I don't need to actually go out and manufacture this. This part already exists in real life and I can just order it. So I extruded it down and then made a flush box on the bottom of our playfield and cut the bottom off. Just like that. So it is nice and flush. And then I realized, oops, I made a mistake. There's not supposed to be a box or a wall here. So I cut that off too. And with that, I also cut a hole in the side right here so that we can actually have the ball kick out and go down to the plunger. And I just brought it all the way down here. It's a little more realistic to, you know, having a plunger feature there. So I was like, okay, now we got to work on the front. There, we need to put a hole here, and we need to put a hole here. So I went ahead and I just drew out. I'm sorry, I did a lot of fillets here. And here is the design that I did there. It's just a couple of little circles touching each other, and then cut that through like this. Rut-row. The heck just happened? Okay, and that's another example. Save your work often. All right, so moving forward again. So I cut that hole out, and then on the other side I cut another hole right here, and I was pretty happy with how this all turned out. Now keep in mind, this is hours. Like, it took me hours to do this, and I'm saving you a lot of headache and time by watching me fiddle around with this and, you know, make mistakes and everything else. But I was really happy with the way these things came out. I converted them from bodies to components and then exported them, and, you know, gave them names and then exported them as a mesh and then saved them into my project file that you can now take advantage of. From there, I went into VPX and I just imported them in. So I'm actually going to load the file that I made. There it is. And what I discovered when I was doing this is when you go to import these things, and you know how I was trying to find everything and I couldn't find it, you can just hit import mesh, and I'm just going to show you with like the apron. So there's my apron, import, import. It goes away and you can't find it because it's blown up. If I just shrink this down to its size, it moves it kind of right back where I had the mesh originally, so I don't have to go and try to find it. Then it's just a matter of, you know, rotating this 90 and rotating this 180 on this axis to get it to actually appear correctly. So I'll show you how that came out. So just like that. And then what I did is, rather than making it pink, I'm just going to delete this because I've already imported it. I decided to really move this around, finagle it around a little bit, and get the alignment set up correctly for this, because we know that there is a rubber stopper here. So I copied this guy over here and then made the rubber band the normal thickness over here, which is a thickness of 9. And, you know, you can just click on it here and you can adjust your thickness under the visuals right there. And from there, I tried to get this right up against the wall. Now keep in mind, this wall right here that you're seeing, this top one, that's the rail. You want this to come kind of in close with, but not touch the edge of the playfield. All right. And I imported this in at the full scale size that I've been doing, which is 2. I put another rubber band stopper here in the middle, and then created a rubber band and moved it around right here because that's how it is in The Hobbit. I ended up having to redo this wall a little bit right here. So I know we don't really need this wall over here, except for right here, because we don't want the ball to eject and come straight down. We want it to eject and come out. So I ended up redoing this a little bit and maneuvering it around and making it so that it doesn't actually protrude through the wall that we create there with that mesh. And then over here in the future, we're going to have a kicker. So it makes sense to kind of bring this down. Sometimes you just got to zoom in to grab it. Bear with me. I know that this is painful. So I'm just dragging this down. This is just a wall that we don't even need anymore, except for like this drain right here. I mean, I could design like a scoop to pick up the ball here if I wanted to in Fusion 360, but this is kind of a pointless wall over here. We just need it over here now and right here. And then clicking on this wall, I adjusted the height to 50 because it was protruding through, and then aligned up the side rails here. It kind of went down into the plunger a little bit, and I just kind of lined up the second nudge here with where I thought visually this was. So I was trying to align it properly there, and then I aligned this in and just moved this over to where it needed to be and give enough of a ball gap that we can launch the ball and have a couple of different options for different strengths for a skill shot. And then I ended up realizing I've got enough room here I can get the ball through, but I want to finagle it around. I want there to be enough of a gap where you can nudge and wiggle and have a shot where you bounce off this and maybe hit this to score some points on the drain, or to enable a recovery mode, or, you know, something kind of fun. I haven't quite decided yet. And then the same thing over on this side. I realized, you know, I've got to readjust some things and tweak it. And so I spent probably a solid 2 days just tweaking and getting this aligned properly so that I had enough of a wiggle room, so that the ball had enough on each lane, readjusting all of this. I don't think I'm going to have to move any of these anymore. I like the way that this has turned out. And then I added a couple of rubbers here, and I added a rubber here. That way I can actually play around with this and actually, you know, get a sense and an idea of how everything is working. And I copied some of these screw heads and screwed those in right there. I didn't copy screws over here yet, just because I don't think I'm ready. I just wanted to see visually how that looked. And now when I launch the ball, I've got some nice, I can actually play with it now. The drains will work, and there's enough room where I can wiggle and nudge, and if it goes straight down the middle, it'll bounce off the post. So I'm really happy with how this has actually turned out. The rest of the table, you know, after this, like we've done a good job copying a Jersey Jack Hobbit machine, and that's not what I want to do. I'm going to have my own unique design with play features and styles and things that are very different from the Hobbit. I just wanted to copy the drain lanes here and get these down, and it has worked out really well. I like the way that this has worked out. The visuals of the pink, I mean, we got to change those over, and that's easy enough. We just click on it, and I'm just going to give it a basic material. We'll just do metal 2. Just continuing on with our theme. Now I may end up giving these like a powder coated treatment. I may just make them look like aluminum, and we're going to cover materials later, like when we get to the point where we're not actually whiteboarding and it's time to start doing some other things and making it visually look aesthetically pleasing. We can do that. I ended up just making this brushed metal, and just to show you briefly how that's done, you just come up here to your material manager, and I made this brushed metal and then changed the basic color here, this as a glossy layer, a shininess, you know, brightness, things like that. I just gave it a base color and add a new one, and I made one that's like black, I made one that's white. And I figured since this is Project Snow Day, let's make it kind of a white color. And that's why we've got this white, no visuals on here. But this gives us a good apron. It gives us the launch lane, the full drain lane. And now you guys have a challenge to come in here and kind of play with this table a little bit. see if you like the drains, see how they're working for you. If there's something that you don't like, let me know. We're going to work together as a community to really make this play better. I mean, I haven't added any of the physics in here yet, and we will do that when we finish whiteboarding and getting everything in here. But I want you guys to kind of play around with this, really like mess around with it, see what you think feels right, and let me know. In the next video, we're going to continue working in these drain lanes. I hope to get the plastics in here. I have to create some other parts from Jersey Jack because these studs are a little bit different. Just to get things done, I have to do some research on the lighting so that I want the lighting, the GI lighting to not just be GI lighting, but I want them to be color change RGBs to indicate different modes. I also have an idea with these side rails, the attachment rails. I like what Jersey Jack does with the newer machines and making these color matrices. And I have an idea for a slide rail of it lighting up as the ball is coming down and putting in sensors along the track to actually help light it up and be a fun little race mode and twinkle and shine and actually have like these really cool color effects. So I'm going to do some research on that. You guys have some homework to actually go in here and play with this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And just have some fun with this. I mean, you can come in here, you can add in different shots, you can start building your own table off of this, but this is the last time that we are going to call this table a basic wide body cabinet. We are now going to be moving forward with Project Snow Day and adding in some of the play features that I intend to add in here and getting these plastics in here. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, please subscribe. As always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.